Hey, what's going on, y'all? It's Corey with Current Angling. In this video, I want to cover the boat ramps in Charleston, specifically the top 5 that are best for a kayak or a small craft. I want to cover the pros, the cons, as well as some of the things like if you have to pay a fee or where you shouldn't park, as well as some of the 5 that you should not go to at all. If you are just coming to Charleston and you want to plan out your trip, definitely this is the right video for you, because I'm going to scout it out for you. I'm going to go to each one of these ramps and I'm going to launch the drone, give you guys a really good representation of each of these launches. Every one of these I've been to myself dozens of times and have done a lot of fishing out of them, so I can give you guys some good feedback on them. All right, so we're going to jump right into it. Number 5 is Folly. As you're going down Folly Road, it's on the right just as you're entering Folly. It's actually on the marsh side, not the beach side, or it's a pretty big launch. There's 4 ramps there, but overall this is a just phenomenal ramp because there's so many waterways throughout. You got the Folly River, which is a pretty big river, and it has all these little creeks and stuff that go in and out of it, river. So there's a couple different inlets you can go to. It's a little hard to get to those inlets with the kayak, but you can do it. It's also a very natural area, so there's just these wide open expanses where there's egrets and eagles and everything. I will say that the negatives are sometimes the parking can be difficult, especially holidays. It does fill up. If you're like me and you're dropping your kayak with your truck, there's not a lot of single vehicle spots. So on Folly River, as soon as you get launched, just be careful because you're in this large river. The current's moving very fast and there are boats zipping all up and down, not just at the ramp, but all up and down Folly River. If you're gonna kayak there, make sure you kind of get off the main drag, tuck in against some docks. There's lots of good fishing, or you can go up and explore some of the creeks and flats. Just try and get off the main drag and you'll be all right. A great ramp that I really like. It's behind Sullivans Island, again on the marsh side. This is station 26. You go down this little road, it's kind of off to the side, a little hidden, but it's a primitive ramp as well, only for like small craft kayaks. This one's actually blocked off with these posts, so you can't launch a boat, you can't trailer or anything. There's a couple things to consider with this one, but I really like this ramp because it is farther up the creek. You don't have to deal with a really strong current right away, as well as any kind of boat traffic or anything, because you're so far up this little creek. So if you're kind of just learning how to kayak, this is a good place because it's not super swift water and there's like no boat traffic. There's a big variety. There's the Breach Inlet, you go behind Isle of Palms, you can fish the docks on Sullivans, you can go across the intercoastal, oyster flats and creeks, and you can explore a lot, but you don't have to. You're already up this creek, you can just kind of hang out there and do some fishing there if that's what you want to do. So it's a great launch and there's great fishing and you're not out into the swift water immediately. The negatives, I would say, is just the fact that it is only a kayak ramp. It's a dirt ramp and the ramp itself is not paved. So at a low tide, really low tide, as you're going down the ramp, you need to stay to the left side a little bit because it's steep and a little rockier. The right side is like super muddy. So stay on that left side, but you are gonna get muddy going in and out, and you're gonna have to maybe drag your kayak a little bit. Other big negative is that on really high flood tide, the parking lot fills up with water. So make sure you park higher in the parking lot in this area right here, and also just don't go on an extremely high 6'6", 6'7" tide. So this ramp here is called Bowens Island. It's a private launch. It's about $6 for a kayak, and I think it was 20 something for a boat. But here you just want to be really respectful. There's an outfitter that works here. It's KOA, and they do a lot of kayak tours, dolphin tours, things like that. You know, their operations are going to be kind of to the side of the ramp, but so you have to make sure that you have a kind of a minimal footprint when you're launching your boat. I like to just park my truck in the parking lot and then wheel it down there. That way I'm kind of out of the way. You're going to leave your fee with either them or you can Venmo. I think there's a Venmo on the sign. What's really nice about this place is you're in this huge kind of wilderness area of waterways, all between Folly Beach and James Island. So there's just kind of expansive waterways. There's lots of flats nearby, lots of oysters, great fishing here. Another great thing is if you get back from a hot day of fishing, there's a restaurant right here, Bowens Island Restaurant. So they have fried fish and fried oysters, things like that, and cold beer. All right, so another favorite spot of mine is Shem Creek. I just recently went out there. It does get a lot of pressure, but there's something about it. I think it's because it is a deep channel, deep creek right off of the harbor, and there's a lot of structure from the restaurants and docks. There just are a lot of fish there. So it's a consistent place. It's a good place to go fishing. Another really great thing about it is it's a pretty good place to go if it's like really windy. Some of the other places that I've mentioned might not be such a good idea if there are like 10-mile-an-hour winds. Definitely some of those other places aren't good to go, but you might want to go here. because it is very protected. There are two kind of different options to go to, or you can do both in the same trip. You can go up the river where it gets really narrow, or you can go down towards the restaurants and there's lots of structure, great fishing throughout the creek. The only negatives that I would say is that the boat ramp is really small and it fills up quickly, and there's only 2 ramps there. So it is competitive sometimes. There will be a line at times. So make sure you know and you're familiar with dropping your kayak in fast. I like to just park in the parking lot and then wheel my kayak all the way to the ramp, throw it in, and just throw the wheels on my kayak and be done with it. When I come in, I like to go up the floating dock, go kind of out of the way, tie off my kayak, go grab my wheels, or if I have my wheels already, just pull it right up on the floating dock and wheel it all the way to the parking lot. That way I'm not using the ramp at all, and I don't have to worry about people in line or angry boaters. Just as you're coming into Mount Pleasant, it's Shem Creek, it's right there. There's restaurants, so you can go have a beer or go get some food as soon as you're done fishing, which is great as well. All right, so I'm at Paradise Landing. I'm gonna call this my #1 for small craft and kayak for a few reasons. One is because it's on the upper Wando, and I consider the Wando as being one of the best fishing rivers here in Charleston. It runs from the harbor between Daniel Island and Mount Pleasant, and then it goes up toward the Francis Marion. It tends to run a little bit cleaner, in my opinion, than the Cooper, the Ashley, the Stono rivers, and it just is a pretty good fishing river. This is the only public ramp that is in the upper side of the Wando River. It is a little bit more of a primitive ramp, so it's better for smaller crafts. You see these guys just launched a smaller boat there with no problem, but there's very limited parking spots here as well. It's great for small crafts like kayaks and stuff because you can just push right in. It does get really shallow at low tide. It's almost hard to get a boat out here at all. Some things to consider is this ramp. See how these guys back here are kind of off to the side and at a diagonal. Just don't park like lengthwise here or lengthwise there, because then you kind of screw over everybody from being able to park their boats and get in here. There in the background you have the Francis Marion Forest and a lot of creeks and rivers that run all the way up into it, and it's super natural setting. It's great fishing, great red fishing, great sea trout fishing. You have some docks and you have a lot of creeks and some different flats and stuff to go fish. A lot of diversity and a lot of places to go check out. Locals' favorites for going kayaking, and personally one of my favorites. So behind me here is the Copahee Sound. I don't have it on the list because it's a little bit treacherous for launching a small craft, especially at a low tide, whether you're pulling in or coming out of low tide. There's a couple hundred yards of pluff mud, and the entire creek just drains right out if you're not careful. So you really have to plan your trip accordingly. If you're not experienced with the tides, I don't necessarily recommend it. But this is Gadsdenville, or Copahee Sound. It's right off of Highway 17 in northern Mount Pleasant. So those are the top 5 places, my very favorite places to launch my kayak here in the Charleston Inshore area. There are some places I really don't like to launch in my kayak, and that is Limehouse Bridge. It's just big open water. There's not a lot of side creeks and there's a lot of current. Talking about current, Riverland Terrace has a launch off of Plymouth, and there's another launch in the same area as Wapu Cut under the bridge there. Those places are extremely strong currents. It's moving fast. It's really dangerous in my opinion, and there's really just nowhere to fish. You can fish off rocks and stuff, but it's just not worth it. Go to some other places that are a little more protected, like I've mentioned in this video. Another place that I personally don't like to go is Sullivans Landing. It's just before Bowens as you're going down Folly Road. All right, y'all, thank you so much for watching this video. If you haven't already, go check out my Shem Creek fishing video. That one, I hit up the #2 spot, and me and my buddy, we do great. I catch some really big redfish, and it's a blast. I show a little bit more drone footage. You definitely don't want to miss it. So I'll see y'all in the next one.